Long Sai took a deep breath. His disciple was right. He should rest. He needs to quickly recover. No matter when Gu Shijie would be resurrected, he would patiently wait for the day she returned. A handful of lust gradually covered the crystal coffin. It also concealed the once beautiful girl who was placed inside the coffin. The firmament stone wandered around the crystal coffin. It was very sad. It spoke in Di Fuyi's mind. My master does not like the dark. Do we have to bury her underground? Di Fuyi's face was pale, but he did not say a word. He seldom spoke lately, unless it was necessary for him to give an order to other people. Otherwise, he would keep his mouth sealed for an entire day. My lord, after a few decades, do you think my master will climb out from the soil? The firmament stone was anxious. It heard a lot of stories about zombies. It pictured Gu Shijie climbing out of her coffin like a zombie, and could not accept that image. Although the firmament stone knew the heavenly secret that its master would be resurrected after 38 years, it did not know how she would be revived. Perhaps, to punish Gu Shijie, it would let her climb out in the form of a zombie before becoming a normal person. Di Fui still did not answer the firmament stone. He continued to slowly build a grave for Gu Shijie. The place was surrounded by mountains and rivers. It was an excellent place for burial with good feng shui. This place was referred to as the legendary Dragon Lair 1. Even though Di Fui knew that Gu Zijie's body was only a shell without a soul, as long as it was about her, he could tolerate any sloppiness. There would be special guards in this place so that no one would steal the body. He only hoped that she could get peace in these decades, after the body was buried. Di Fui took out his flute and played a song. The music fluttered into the air like a lullaby. After he finished one song, he smashed the flute in front of her grave. The white jade flute shattered on the ground. The firmament stone was shocked by what it witnessed. It looked at Di Fui and naturally understood what he meant. His flute was one of Gu Zijie's favorite things. Now that she was no longer here, he would never play the flute again. Boya, the ancient singer, smashed his piano to say goodbye to his soulmate. The Lord broke his flute to say goodbye to his lover. Di Fui looked at the sky. At this moment, the sun was half set, and the clouds had turned golden red by the setting sun. It was quite a spectacular scene. Usually, it was normal for him to watch the sunrise and sunset. Even if the scenery were spectacular, he would get bored since he had seen it for thousands of years. The beauty of nature could no longer amaze him. But now he looked at the half-falling sunset and had a nostalgic feeling. He really wanted to live longer, even if it was only until the day of her resurrection. It would mean the world to him even if he could just see her from afar. When he was about to turn around, he suddenly saw a stream of colorful lights in the air. It was like an aurora swaying in the sky. It made the sunset glow redder, and the clouds looked more magnificent. It was breathtaking, because the lights were mixed with the light of the setting sun. Di Fui did not see clearly how many colors were present, but he suspected that there were at least 5. Had the interim lord finally come? His fingers clenched slightly. In fact, he did not want to teach his skills to the interim lord. After all, the power would shake people's heart. If the interim lord acted on behalf of Gu Shijie for too long, he or she might not want to let go of the power. When Gu Shijie took over, there might be a lot of trouble. The firmament stone stood upright in awe of the lights. My lord, this should be because of the interim lord. Let's go and take a look. To have a proper handover, Di Fui had to be by the interim lord's side and personally guide him for more than 3 months. Di Fui only had 3 months left, so they should not waste any more time. Di Fui took a deep breath. He knew that he should not delay it. He had never prioritized the heavenly laws, and he had even violated them before. But this time it was a matter of Gu Zijie's future. He did not want to jeopardize anything. Is it a man or a woman? Di Fui asked. The firmament stone answered, it should be a man. Di Fui frowned. A man? Was the Lord jealous? Di Fui, you only have 3 months left. It's not necessary to be jealous, right? The firmament stone carefully said, My lord, this interim lord has been chosen by the upper bound. His skills should be very strong, so you just need to teach him the key tasks of the role. For example, the way of observing the stars and controlling the various mysterious lands. The firmament stone talked a lot, but Di Fui only glanced at it coldly. Is this person Long Moyen? The firmament stone was shocked and blurted. How did you know that? Di Fui turned and left. There were not many things in this world that could be hidden from him. He had kept an eye on Long Moyen for a long time. This person rarely showed up in public and never got involved in any political battles. His skills were not too high but now too low either. He did not like to fight with people, but he had never lost a battle. Furthermore, this person seemed to have upgraded his spiritual power recently. Di Fui guessed that he came from the upper bound. But since he did not interfere with anything, Di Fui was too lazy to care about him. When necessary, Di Fui was quite good at entertaining people who came from different places, as long as they did not pose a threat to this continent. Of course, he had spies that helped him to keep an eye on these people. For example, Long Moyen was now living in the vicinity of Yueming City in the Haoyue Kingdom. Outside of Yueming City was the Guangming Mountain that had one of Gu Zijia's temples. According to the direction in which the colorful lights were emitted, it was the direction of Yueming City where Long Moyen was located. He never expected that this person was the interim lord. It seemed that he was also very interested in Gu Shijio. Di Fui had a strange look on his face, and it seemed like he was planning something. He could teach all his skills to Long Moyen, but he would also put a spell on him so that he had to hand over the power when Gu Shijio returned, and could not act unfavorably on her. Of course, he was not jealous. He was not qualified to be jealous now. But he did feel envious of Long Moyen as he could stay together with Gu Shijio when the time came. The firmament stone hesitantly wandered around him. It continuously flashed different colored lights. Di Fui casually asked it, "What do you want to say?" The firmament stone replied, "You have to promise not to shoot me, then I will say it." Di Fui took a look at it, and the firmament stone carefully shrank back. Di Fui had sensed that this stone was going to sprinkle salt on his wound, but he still wanted to know what it had to say. Say it. Actually, I will say a bit first. I heard it from somewhere, so I don't guarantee that it is the truth. I heard that, if you did not intercept, my master and Long Moyen should be a pair by now. Long Moyen would be assisting my master by her side for thousands of years, and become the perfect match that everyone would envy. Di Fui's face was pale. The firmament stone did something worse than he expected. The firmament stone basically inserted a knife into his heart, and then sprinkled a handful of salt over it. Gu Shijia would resurrect after 30 or 40 years. At that time, Long Moyen would be in frequent contact with her as an interim lord. If she did not have her memories of this world, she might still become the perfect match with Long Moyen. Di Fui an ache in his chest, especially when he thought of the fact that he had to hand over his skill sets to Long Moyen. Damn the heavenly laws. Was it trying to mess with him? Di Fui was furious and let out a very strong aura. The firmament stone always paid attention to his emotions and carefully took a few steps backward. It stayed away at a safe distance because it was afraid of what might come to be. Gu Shijia was panting under a big tree. Her eyes were brighter and sharper than the sunset on the horizon. She finally got out of the temple. Moreover, she was out in a physical body. It was an extremely challenging process to get to her current state. For more than a month, she had practiced day to night without any rest. She tried all the methods she knew to quicken the process. Her desire to resurrect had never been so strong. It was a very painful process. It felt like she was suffering in hell every moment, but the thought of wanting to be alive to see him became her mental support. She would do whatever it takes. She was truly desperate to see him. At the very moment when the wizardry barrier was broken, there was a 7-colored ray of light that burst into the sky which really shocked her. Upon breaking the barrier, she leaned on a big tree to take a break, and planned to look for Di Fui right away. She missed him. She missed him like crazy. She gasped for a moment with her eyes closed, and she thought of a plan in her heart. She opened her eyes and was about to act, but suddenly saw something not too far from the tree. There stood a man in a green robe who looked gentle and elegant like a noble young man. She knew this person. It was Long Moyen. He was looking at her with a strange look. Why was he surprised? Was it because Gu Shijio could break the wizardry barrier? "Mr. Long, I didn't expect you to be here too." Gu Shizhou already knew that she was now in the Haoyue kingdom. It was the domain of Qianlingyu. Why would Long Moyan be here? Was he just passing by? She quickly observed Long Moyan, and found that Long Moyan was still in shock. He was holding a flower, and seemed to be wanting to give it to Gu Shizhou. Gu Shizhou knew that Di Fui did not disclose her death to the public. Most people still did not know that she had died. Although Gu Shizhou was eager to learn why Long Moyan was in shock, she was anxious to find Di Fui. After she greeted Long Moyan, she immediately turned and wanted to leave. Long Moyan finally regained his senses and stepped forward. He intentionally blocked her way. Shizhou, it is rare to meet you. Shall we go and have a drink? It was common courtesy for old friends to have tea together after a long time apart. However, Gu Shizhou was not in the mood, so she waved her hand to kindly reject. I am sorry. I have an urgent matter to attend to. We will gather again in the future. Shizhou, wait. I have something to say to you about Celestial Masters Wa. That stopped Gu Shizhou dead in her tracks. Her heart jumped as she turned to face Long Moyan. What about him? Long Moyan sighed. This is not a suitable place to tell you. Let's find a place to talk, shall we? Before Gu Shizhou could answer, Long Moyan interrupted. Don't worry. It won't take too much of your time. 1 hour is enough. After all, Gu Shizhou had been stuck in the temple here for so long. She had not heard any news about Di Fui lately, so she had no idea where to look for him. Now that Long Moyan had some information, she wished to hear it. It was only an hour, thus she nodded. All right. Long Moyan was relieved, and he led the way. Let's go. He then turned and walked toward the mountains. Gu Shizhou was surprised. Where do you want to take me? That's my home. Gu Shizhou frowned at his response. You have settled down here? Long Moyan said with a smile. Just recently. It could be a temporary thing, but I like the scenery here. This count had always liked to travel the world. He was known for changing his home several times based on his mood. Gu Shizhou had heard about him, so she did not feel that anything was out of the ordinary. Long Moyan's residence was a bamboo house. It was built in the middle of the mountain. Coincidentally, it was only 3 or 4 miles away from Gu Zijia's temple. The surrounding area was full of bamboo forests. When the wind blew in the mountains, the bamboo leaves creaked and created some soft music. There were some herbs planted around the fences of the bamboo house. There were banana trees present as well, and several farm tools were placed against the wall of the house. The scenery was splendid. Long Moyan stood in front of the bamboo house in a green robe. It was indeed a picturesque sight. Shizhou, this is where I live. Do you like it? Gu Shizhou looked at him, and then looked at the surrounding environment. She nodded in response. It looks quite harmonious. Although the place looked great, it made Gu Shizhou reflect on her past in an odd way. When she was an assassin, she thought of living in seclusion, and her dream residence was quite similar to this. By right, she should like this place very much. But at this moment, when she really stood here, she did not have any feelings at all. She did not hate it but did not like it either, thus she just merely gave a generic response. Long Moyan tried to pry. Is it your dream home? Gu Shizhou raised her eyebrows. She half-heartedly and half-jokingly said, Mr. Long, this is your home, not mine. It is not important whether I like it or not. What did his house have to do with her? Long Moyan looked down. I did hope you would like it. Gu Shizhou was not in the mood to entertain him. You should hope that your future wife likes it, not a mere passerby like me. Long Moyan looked straight into her eyes. Shizhou, I have found Chongsheng. Gu Zijia's heart raced at that very instant. Huh. Long Moyan stared at her. Shizhou, do you still want to hide it from me at this moment? She did not expect him to recognize her. Gu Shizhou raised her eyebrows, but she did not deny it anymore. Mr. Long, I am sorry. I did hide my identity from you and Chongsheng is my nickname. However, when I met you, we were just acquaintances. We had no deep friendship. Gu Shizhou was already troubled by her previous relationship, and naturally, she did not want to get involved in any other relationship, especially at this time. Gu Shizhou made that crystal clear to Long Moyan. Long Moyen was visibly disappointed. He shook his head as dismay but simultaneously waved his hand. In an instant, there was a red mud stove in sight. There was a teapot placed on the stove and water was boiling in the teapot. He then placed a set of bamboo teacups on the table. It seemed like he was going to brew some tea. His posture was quite elegant and reminded her of Di Fui. Gu Shijie was understandably impatient today. Mr. Long, didn't you say that you have something to tell me about Celestial Masters Wa? Long Moyen's grip on the teacup grew firm at her response. He naturally saw her urgency, but he did not say anything. Instead, he prepared a cup of tea for her and sighed. Shijie, you are too anxious. Come, let's drink a cup of tea first. Gu Shijie glanced at the cup and picked it up. The tea was fragrant and coupled with the bamboo fragrance from the environment, it could make people feel calm. Unfortunately, Gu Shijie could not stay calm now. Shijie, do you believe in God's will? Long Moyen suddenly asked. What if I believe and what if I do not? Gu Shijie asked him back. She seemed to be a bit thirsty and took a sip of tea. Long Moyen looked at her. Shijie, do you know, I was so excited when I first met you. I have been looking for you for so many years. To find you, I even refused an arrangement by God. Was he trying to confess? Gu Shijie took another sip of tea and tried to end the conversation. Maybe you should accept God's will for you then. Anyway, his destined partner would never be her. Long Moyen smiled. Yes, I should have accepted God's arrangement. I almost missed a good marriage. Later, I finally understood, so I came here. I stayed here and waited for my destined partner. Gu Shijie seemed relieved and smiled. Your destined partner stays in this mountain? Long Moyen looked into the distance this time. Yes, in this mountain. She was trapped here because she violated God's will. Thus she was trapped here as her punishment. She should be able to get out of her punishment after 38 years, but this girl is always exceptional. She got rid of the trouble early. Gu Zijie's face changed slightly, and her fingers tightened on the cup. Of course, she knew the hidden meaning behind Long Moyen's words. Her heart sank. When she was trapped, the voice also said that she would be stuck for 38 years. It also noted that it was according to God's will. Now Long Moyen also said the same thing. She bit her lips, and her eyes flashed. Mr. Long, who are you? I am your destined partner. Long Moyen smiled mildly, with a strong force that could not be rejected. Shijie, we are the perfect match according to God's will. Which means I am your fiancé, and will accompany you for the rest of your life. Gu Shijie was stunned. She could not believe that she was meant to be trapped there, and was even predestined to be engaged to another man. That was ridiculous. She smiled and began to judge him with a sharp gaze. What kind of relationship do you have with the person who trapped me here? Gu Shijie was now wondering if Long Moyen was the culprit who planned all the mischievous incidents. However, only someone with level 10 or above spiritual power could create the wizardry barrier she was trapped inside before. In fact, Long Moyen only possessed a level 9 spiritual power. Long Moyen sighed. Shijie, you've got me wrong. I have nothing to do with the one who trapped you here. I came here because I have to obey a heavenly order. I thought I would need to wait for 38 years here, but I don't believe in any heavenly arrangement. Gu Shijie interrupted him with a sarcastic smile. Thus, we are not meant to be together. You're not my destined fiancé. Excuse me, Prince Long. I've something to do. See you. She would not believe in any heavenly arrangement. *CK the heavenly arrangement. She could only allow one man in her heart. All she wanted to do now was to see that man. She wanted to see him so badly that it was driving her crazy. She got up and was ready to teleport away, because she did not want to continue talking to him. However, Long Moyen quickly pulled her sleeve. Shijie, are you not keen to know more about my background? Long Moyen felt numbness at his palm, and Gu Zijie's sleeve suddenly slipped away out of his palm at the next second. When he lifted his head again, Gu Shijie was looking at him with her lips pursed. Icily, she fixed her gaze at him and responded, No. Long Moyen was getting impatient now too. Could you just listen to me? I've told you, I'm not interested to know about heavenly laws or any heavenly arrangements. Gu Shijie was lazy to listen to his crap, and immediately teleported away. Bang! She crashed into a bamboo. The bamboo was shaking and almost shattered into 2 pieces. Gu Shijie frowned. Was her teleportation not working? Or was something wrong with the bamboo forest? Gu Shijie slowly got up and looked at Long Moyen. What have you done? To her surprise, Long Moyen could set up such a powerful wizardry barrier. Long Moyen glimpsed at her as he stood there. Shijie, can you just listen to me? Gu Shijie slightly twitched her lips. Fine, go ahead. She did not walk back but leaned against the bamboo and played with a few bamboo leaves. Long Moyen sighed in frustration. Shijie, I come from the upper bound. Gu Shijie remained expressionless, but she did respond. The same place where Fairy Queenly came from? Long Moyen paused. Normally, ordinary people would naturally kneel and greet people from the upper bound because they would feel the other party had an extremely noble identity. However, since Fairy Queenly made a mess here, the reputation of the upper bound had been ruined. Hence, people from this continent did not pay high respect to them anymore. Shijie am different from her. In fact, she has made some mistakes and been kicked down by the immortals. On the other hand, I'm here with an official order. Unfortunately, my spiritual power was sealed together with some of my memories. Hence, I always thought I was just an ordinary master from a noble family. Only 9 years ago did I get to know my mission. Shijie, I've missed the opportunity to be with you due to my naivety, but it's not too late now. I really didn't expect that my beloved woman would turn out to be my predestined wife. He slowly walked toward Gu Shijie. Shijie, I know there's someone else in your heart, but he is not meant to be with you. Besides that, he has limited time to stay by your side. Why do you need to be so obsessed with him? Gu Shijie narrowed her eyes on Long Moyen. There was a light-filled aura surrounding him right now. Was he prepared to fight with her? He seemed to possess a high spiritual power, much higher than Gu Shijie could pick up from before. Perhaps he was good at concealing his power. Based on their conversation, he did not really care about Fairy Queenly. Perhaps, he was even more powerful than Fairy Queenly, and his spiritual power was probably higher than level 10. Gu Shijie immediately sensed her inner power, and realized she still possessed a level 10 spiritual power, despite her previous calamity. Although she had consumed some of her spiritual power when she tried to break the wizardry barrier earlier. Hence, she felt a little weak at the moment. Unfortunately, Long Moyen was well prepared for this day. He had set a wizardry barrier which could weaken others' power. Besides that, something was wrong with the tea she drank. She realized that she would probably lose if she were to get into a fight with him today. Gu Shijie then glimpsed at him with a frown and asked, "What do you want?" Long Moyen added, "Shijie, I know it's difficult for you to accept me in such a short time. In fact, we have plenty of time. The world would belong to us. I'll help you to manage this continent. In fact, you probably didn't know that I have another identity. What is it?" "I am the stand-in lord." Long Moyen answered with a tone of arrogance. Indeed, he was the one. Gu Shijie slightly pursed her lips. She recalled the annoying voice in her head did mention about a temporary substitute lord. She remained silent as she fixed her eyes on him. "Shijie, both of you disobeyed the heavenly laws. Hence, you received the punishments. Initially, you were supposed to be reborn a few hundred years later. Fortunately for us, Huang Tu built several credit temples for you, and he tried to solve many problems for the people in order to accumulate blessings for you. Therefore, you got to come back earlier. However, it would still take you 38 years to come back to life while Huang Tu only had 3 months left to live. He could not wait until you were reborn to pass down all the responsibilities. Hence, the immortals appointed me to be the stand-in lord, so that I can take over everything and rule the world on behalf of him until you came back. By that time, I'll need to let you succeed the throne." Gu Shijie still remained silent with an expressionless face. Long Moyen continued, "I also just got to know about the heavenly order in my dream recently. That's why I'm staying here. Firstly, I'm here to take care of you. Secondly, I'm waiting for Huang Tu to find me. I think he should have known about my new identity by now. Hence, he will definitely come one of these few days." Gu Shijie chuckled. "How do you know he will come?" According to how well I know him, he doesn't take the heavenly laws seriously. Long Moyen looked at her with a smile. Oh really? Suddenly, Gu Zijia's heart skipped a beat. Indeed, Difui always disobeyed the heavenly laws. However, this could affect Gu Zijia's future. She seemed to recall the scene when she last saw Difui. He looked so lonely when he played the flute for her dead body the entire night. Her heart was in pain and her eyes were wet. He could really do anything for her. Long Moyen noticed her eyes were red even though she remained silent. Although he had no idea what was on her mind, he knew there was no one else who could affect her emotions like that man. He suddenly pointed to the sky. Look, Shijio. Gu Shijio looked at her surroundings and saw a sunset the size of a bowl. The sky was getting noticeably darker with a few orange clouds still floating in the sky. The sunset is very beautiful, but it doesn't last, just like Huang too. Why do you have to be so obsessed with him? I'm your sunshine. I'm brighter than the sunset. Gu Shijio remained silent while she was playing with a bamboo shoot. It was really awkward for her to listen to him expressing his feelings like a poet. The bamboo shoot in her hand was very young to the extent she could squeeze some juice out of it. Shijio, the animals know where is good to be their habitat. Hence, you should know who is best for you. We can go everywhere together. We can rule the world together, and be at the top of the world together if you're willing to be with me. We can spend time together every day and enjoy the wonders of life. We are a perfect match. Long Moyen began to create a sweet dream for her. Gu Shijio looked at him with her head slanted to one side. Did you just say we can go everywhere together and rule the world together? I'm the official lord. You're just a substitute lord. The sky cannot accommodate two suns, and there are never two kings in a country. Long Moyen paused for a second. Shijio, we will be a team if we get married. Hence, it does not matter who is the official lord. Besides that, you're a girl. You shouldn't burden yourself with these responsibilities. As your husband, I should share your burden. I know you have no interest in power. I'll help you manage everything and you only have to enjoy the credit. Let me handle the execution part. He sounded like he was going to work and fund the family, and she could just spend her days relaxing and enjoying life. However, Gu Shijio is not that type of person per se. Indeed, she had no interest in power. However, that did not mean she was a complete idiot on politics. Mankind was greedy. Regardless of whether they were relatives or royal family members, they could kill each other for power. A family was just a joke when it comes to power, not to mention the throne of the Lord. Prince Long already could not let go of the power even before he succeeds the role as a substitute lord. If she were to be reborn 38 years later, he would have already abused his power. By that time, how would he hand over the throne? Perhaps, many disasters would have been created by him. In fact, he might even kill his wife to rule the world. Gu Shijio silently sensed her body again, and she realized the poison in the drink she had earlier had been eliminated out from her system while she was playing with the bamboo shoot. Long Moyen was still busy trying to convince her. Shijio, we are meant to be together. We are a perfect match. Gu Shijio suddenly interrupted him. I'm the one in charge of my life, not the immortals and certainly not you. I never believed in predestined arrangements. Even if I only managed to spend one day with him, I would only be with him. I wouldn't love you even if you could be alive as long as the world exists. Long Moyen frowned because he never expected her to be so stubborn even after talking to her for so long. So, until now you still don't believe in the predestined arrangement? No. Gu Shijio answered with an icy tone. I believe that we can always beat fate as long as we try our best. According to heavenly laws, I was supposed to be reborn after 38 years, but I'm already here now, right? Long Moyen was speechless. What she said was true. Hence, Long Moyen ran out of words all of a sudden. In fact, he could not figure out this lady. She had disobeyed the heavenly laws and neglected the immortals several times. Gu Shijio looked at him calmly as she placed her arms in front of her chest. Since I am here early, it is not necessary to have a stand-in lord. I'll find Difui myself. Long Moyen grew anxious. Shijio, since you're not supposed to be reborn this early, you shouldn't find him because we can't foresee the consequences. What about this? You stay here and I'll learn all the skills from him first. I'll teach them to you when I return. In fact, I'm really happy that you could return so early because we can spend more time together. Gu Shijie lightly tapped on the wizardry barrier beside her with a bamboo shred. Icily, she said. You just want to trap me here? For 38 years? Long Moyen shook his head. No, Shijie. I'm sure you're still very weak. This place is rich in spiritual power, and it's good for cultivation. You should stay here to restore your energy and power. I'll bring you out after 3 months. By that time, I'll keep you company wherever you want to go. Gu Shijie took a deep breath. She knew that Long Moyen wanted to trap her here, until Di Fui dies. She took a step forward and asked, Do you think you can trap me? Gu Shijie was actually buying time earlier as she wanted to take the opportunity to restore her energy, and also understand the story leading to this point. Besides that, she also eliminated the poison inside her body, and managed to restore half of her energy. Certainly, she did not want to continue talking nonsense with him. Her time was very valuable now to the extent she could not afford to waste a single second. Right after she finished talking, she launched a powerful attack toward Long Moyen. A colorful ray gushed toward Long Moyen, and it seemed to be a fierce attack. Long Moyen quickly took a step back and avoided the attack. Shijie, you can't use spiritual power. I added something into your drink. Your blood vessels would corrode if you utilize your spiritual. In fact, you would turn into a handicapped adult if you don't stop immediately. While he was talking, he also flicked his sleeve toward the bamboos. Suddenly, a door appeared for a split second, and he disappeared from the door with his voice lingering in the air. Shijie will not hurt you. The medicine is beneficial to you as long as you don't use your spiritual power for the next 3 months. You can never break this wizardry barrier. Just stay in there for 3 months. Gu Shijie was left alone in that space, while Long Moyen was already gone. Apparently, he did not want to fight with her, hence he chose to avoid her. Gu Shijie silently heaved a sigh of relief, because she actually did not have the confidence to win the battle. Since he had left, it was a good time for her to focus on breaking this wizardry barrier. She was well prepared that this would be a very difficult barrier to break. However, she was an expert after all. She could already break the wizardry barrier set by the heavens. Regardless what type of wizardry barrier, it was not a big deal to her. She would escape. She began to get busy finding the solution. Di Fui, even God could not stop telling me that we are not meant to be, but I don't believe it. I must see you. Long Moyen was standing on a small hill. He sighed as he was looking at the place where he used to live. Indeed, he did not want to fight with Gu Shijie because it was not beneficial to either party. Therefore, he thought his strategy in dealing with Gu Shijie was the best solution for now. There was a water source, dry food, and even a small farm at Long Moyen's place. Gu Shijie would not starve even if she was stuck in there for months. Soon Di Fui would pass on. By that time, nothing could change. After all, they were a predestined couple. Shijie, we are supposed to be a couple. I've already missed the opportunity once. I'll not repeat the same mistake again. In fact, he was not worried about Gu Shijie breaking the wizardry barrier. Apparently, Long Moyen was an expert in setting up barriers. The wizardry barrier set by him was unbreakable in this world. In fact, there were only a few immortals who could do so. In fact, Long Moyen even trapped an immortal in a wizardry barrier for a year. Breaking this barrier requires a special skill along with sufficient spiritual power. Unfortunately, Long Moyen had added a poison into Gu Shijie's drink which would restrict her spiritual power. Hence, there was no escape for her. Long Moyen stood and observed the barrier for some time. However, he did not notice anything unusual. Hence, Gu Shijie was probably still figuring out a way to escape. Finally, he was relieved. He was wondering whether he should find Huang too. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something. His body immediately stiffened when he turned his head around. A man in a white robe was floating on top of the tree behind him. His robe was fluttering in the air, and his hair looked like a black waterfall. There was a silver mask covering his face that only exposed his charming eyes. At the moment, the white-clothed man was judging Long Moyen as he fixed his eyes on him. That was the Lord. Gosh. Huang too. Chow chow. One arrived as soon as he was mentioned. Long Moyen almost suffocated. He knew Huang Tu was extremely powerful, but he did not expect his mightiness to be way beyond his imagination. He did not even realize when the Lord had arrived. He quickly bent to greet him. My lord. Di Fui remained silent as he glimpsed at Long Moyen. He has always been unpredictable because he hardly expressed his emotion. Long Moyen was motionless as he did not know what to do. A moment later, Di Fui finally asked, Since you know who I am, why did you not kneel to greet me? In this world, everyone needed to kneel to greet the Lord whenever they saw him, including the emperors. They would only be excused upon his order. Since Long Moyen knew that he was the stand-in lord, he did not feel like kneeling in front of Di Fui because he thought they were almost at the same level. He cleared his throat and glimpsed at Di Fui courageously. Calmly he said, My lord, am appointed by the heavenly order to be the stand-in lord. Hence, I feel the courtesy is unnecessary. Di Fui narrowed his eyes. It seemed that Long Moyen already knew his position. Since he knew that he was the stand-in lord, he would probably know that Di Fui was dying soon. Thus, he should have paid Di Fui a visit earlier instead of living a leisurely life here. Was he hiding something? Di Fui had received some information about him, and he knew that Long Moyen had been staying here for almost a month. He was planting some crops every day and enjoy the hermit life. Long Moyen was not a real hermit. He built good relationships with powerful people, and was once quite close to Rongjiaoa. He was also a cunning person. However, he was good at hiding his true colors. So you expected me to come to you? Di Fui asked in an icy tone. Long Moyen did not expect him to ask in such a frank way. He paused for a second before he could continue. I was too cowardly. Although I knew about the heavenly secret, I did not have the courage to see you. I have no interest in power. In fact, I didn't know what to do as this happened all of a sudden. Thus, I thought I can catch some fresh air here. I'm really sorry, I didn't know you would look for me. He managed to answer flawlessly to the extent no one could find any weaknesses. However, Di Fui was standing right in front of him. No one could hide or try to fool him. Di Fui looked at him for a short while, and realized that his body language did not look like an apologetic man. Apparently he was just lying. It was definitely extremely difficult for someone like him to let go of his power once he really took over the throne. Although Di Fui did not express anything, he had already made a silent conclusion about Long Moyen. The firmament stone was also observing Long Moyen as it coiled on Di Fui's wrist. After all, Long Moyen was the stand-in lord, and he would have many interactions with its master. Hence, it must help to inspect him. Long Moyen was quite handsome. It rated him 90 marks in that aspect. He seemed to have no greed on power based on what he had said earlier. There was mud stain at the end of his robe though. He was a typical hermit. It rated him 90 marks again. In fact, the firmament stone did not see many people before. Hence, it thought highly of Long Moyen. My lord, Long Moyen is quite good. I think his spiritual power is already level 9, right? He seems to be a down-to-earth person. I think you can just bring him along and teach him your kung fu. The firmament stone said all this in Di Fui's head. Shut up. That was what Di Fui replied it. He then took a look further ahead, and saw a small bamboo tavern behind the bamboo grove. He flew down and slowly moved forward. Casually he said, let's go. Long Moyen's face immediately changed as he looked at the direction where the Lord was moving toward. My lord, you came all the way here. Let me bring you to the town for a good meal. Long Moyen quickly ran over, and tried to block Di Fui from moving forward. Di Fui stopped and responded, I'm good, your house is just fine. He wanted to take a look because that might be the best place to find out more about him. My lord, my house is too small and simple. I'm afraid it is an insult to host you there. Let's go to the town for a cleaner place. Di Fui was doubtful. According to what he knew about Long Moyen, he was also obsessed with cleanliness. Hence, everywhere he stayed at was extremely clean. It was possible for him to own a simple house, but it was almost impossible for it to be dirty. Was he really that humble? Or was there something else in his house? I feel a little tired. Since your house is just nearby, I should just rest at your place. Without waiting for Long Moyen to agree, Di Fui continued to walk in the direction of his house. Long Moyen was extremely panicked. He regretted not concealing his entire house earlier. The wizardry barrier he set around his house was invisible from afar. However, the Lord could definitely notice it when he goes nearer. Gu Shijie was still trapped in there. What if Di Fui finds out? All of his plans would be ruined. Long Moyen finally figured out a solution. He quickly ran over and stopped in front of Di Fui. My lord, I'm sure you want to examine my kung fu. I can demonstrate it to you right here. Perhaps I can make a mansion for you to take a break with my power? Your comments are very much welcomed. Long Moyen suggested with a smile. Before Di Fui could say anything, Long Moyen took a step backward. Between his fingertips emerged a 5-colored light. He was, in fact, very capable. He built a bamboo mansion beside the hill in a short period of time. It was octagonal with arches and eaves, as well as dangling silver bells, making it seem elegant and traditional. Looking at it from afar, the bamboo building looked more luxurious than his bamboo abode. Long Moyen's bamboo abode looked like a residence, but that bamboo building looked like a king's palace. He bowed respectfully and spoke. My lord, please go into the bamboo building and have a rest. Di Fui's eyes sparkled. He did not reject this time. Okay, that is nice of you. He then lifted his foot and marched towards the bamboo building. Long Moyen gave off an almost inaudible sigh and followed in hurriedly. The bamboo building was well furnished. There were wooden stools and a couch, along with other ancient wooden furniture. Each one of them looked dainty. Di Fui walked around the building, and Long Moyen invited him to have a seat by an ancient wooden table. With a sincere-looking face he requested, My lord, is my power acceptable? Di Fui laughed a little before he responded. Prince Long has already reached a level 10 spiritual power. He is to be congratulated. As Long Moyen used his powers, he knew that he could not hide his true identity before Di Fui. Hence, he said respectfully, Moyen comes from above. First, he had his memory blocked and was unable to recall what happened in the past. It was only until a few days ago that he remembers. Moyen has achieved a level 10 spiritual power, but did not mean to hide his true identity. I hope that my lord you would forgive me. Di Fui threw him a glance. That person was so good at speaking. He examined the bamboo building and gave some feedback. Your powers are quite great, but to be the stand-in lord, I would need to test your other capabilities. Please carry out your tasks, my lord. Knowing how to fight is a capability. As Di Fui stretched out his arm, he was wielding a long sword. He snapped his fingers, and the long sword cracked the roof of the building and flew into the sky. It turned about in the air and transformed into a couple of shorter swords, which arranged themselves into a bagua matrix. Each tip of the swords was aimed at Long Moyen, but none of them had attacked him yet. The murderous atmosphere had lifted the entire roof of the bamboo building. Firmament Stone silently laid on Di Fui's wrist, and mused. My lord, are you jealous? Long Moyen is quick at building and you are quick at bulldozing. Long Moyen, try and destroy my sword matrix. Do not say that I did not warn you, but this matrix is extremely malicious, and you will need to destroy it or else you would be sacrificed within it. Di Fui was sitting on a treetop while sounds of the river flowing and the wind in the air permeated the hillside. Long Moyen's countenance changed a little. That sword matrix was too malicious. If he did not perform to his full potential, he would die. Before he sorted out his thoughts, the little swords had already started swooping down on him with force. Firmament Stone was experienced. Simply by looking at the sword matrix, he realized how malicious it was. Hence he asked warily, My lord, such a matrix is to defeat the demons, isn't it? Even if Long Moyen has reached a level 10 spiritual power, he would not be able to handle it. Don't put him to death. If you kill the stand-in lord, what would my boss do in the future? Di Fui replied nonchalantly, if he would die so easily, he would not be the stand-in lord. At the moment, the sword matrix had swallowed Long Moyen. Not even a piece of his clothing could be seen. Under such an arrangement, Long Moyen would not be able to free himself within 1.5 hours. Di Fui leaped down and walked forward while speaking. My lord, where are you heading towards? Firmament Stone was rather concerned. Going to have a look at his abode. Let's see what he has hidden over there. Di Fui's reply was vague. Long Moyen was rather guileful, but his tricks were still faint before Di Fui. Throughout his lifetime, Di Fui had met numerous people and been through numerous events. Hence he could easily look through someone, and he was rarely wrong. Attempting to manipulate him was not a good idea, as he could easily figure it out. Long Moyen did not want him to have a look at his abode, so there must be something there. Although Di Fui looked like he was just taking a stroll, in the glimpse of an eye, he was already near the abode. He could recognize the wizardry barrier. Long Moyen had to give his best to dodge the assault of the sword matrix. Subconsciously, he stole a glance at Di Fui to see if he would be deserving of a compliment, but he could not see anyone there. When he was about to look around, he was struck by a powerful blow. He grew nervous, lost his focus, and his arm was hurt by a small sword. The small sword did not make him bleed much, but it put him in extreme pain. It was more painful than being stung by a wasp. He was in so much pain that he shivered and his vision became blurry. If you are pierced up to 5 times, you would be swollen to a point where you would look double your size, and your external abilities would be halved. Di Fui's voice was channeled over. Do not blame me for not warning you. Long Moyen was furious. He saw the colorful light emerging from Di Fui's fingertips. Apparently he was trying to break the wizardry barrier at his residence. He was in trepidation, rushing about in the sword matrix while crying, "My lord, you cannot break the enchantment border." Why? It is a long story. Wait until I manage to destruct this sword matrix and I will tell you. Please do not break the enchantment border. Long Moyen was using his delaying tactic. Di Fui laughed. Trying to delay? Long Moyen, what I am trying to figure out is your character. If you had nothing to hide, why would you make such an abode so mysterious? Could you have done something unacceptable here that you are afraid others will find out? If so, I will need to look into it. Long Moyen's countenance changed. Although he was confident of his wizardry barrier, he knew that the lord standing before him was very powerful. Long Moyen was anxious. Oblivious to the pursuit of the sword matrix, he rushed over. "My lord, hang on." Before he could finish his sentence, Di Fui's streak of 7 colored rays had struck the enchantment border. The enchantment border shook aggressively, and a circle of 5 colored light was reflected back onto Di Fui. Di Fui strained his eyes, not knowing that the enchantment border would be so powerful that it could counter his attack. He flipped his sleeves, and out came a streak of rainbow colors that crashed head-on with the 5-colored light, immediately crushing it. "My lord, this is a rainbow wizardry barrier from the upper bound. Blindly breaking it would easily hurt you. My lord, please stop it." Long Moyen rushed over with a cloud of swords behind him. Such a rash advance was not beneficial to him, and he got another wound on his body. "So, you are saying that for the good of myself?" Di Fui was unimpressed. Of course, Moyen is afraid that this matrix would hurt the lord." Long Moyen defended himself aggressively while in the midst of a battle. "Then I would like to ask you one more thing. What is hidden within the wizardry barrier?" "No, nothing. Just some personal things that belong to Moyen. Those are not presentable to others." Di Fui threw him a skeptical glance. "Are you sure?" Although Di Fui did not know exactly what Long Moyen had hidden from him, he knew for sure that he was keeping something. Since he had predicted Di Fui's arrival, he would definitely not risk doing something wrongful in his abode. Unless he had hidden the thing in his abode by means of deceit, and there was insufficient time for him to move it elsewhere. He was so afraid that the lord would see it. What could it be? Di Fui was good at looking through people's hearts, but for a moment, he was unable to figure out what had Long Moyen hidden. Since he knew that he was guilty, he would not let him go. In regards to the wizardry barrier, he was too lazy to try out each technique, so he decided to use his most powerful skill to destroy the barrier. His 7-colored ray was about to greet the enchantment border. Bang! With a loud thump, the enchantment border broke. A green shadow rushed out from within. It rushed towards Di Fui. Although Di Fui had excellent eyes, he was unable to see the green shadow. Seeing that it was about to crash into him, he was going to forcefully push it back. However, Out of a sudden, he realized something and his hand froze. The green shadow lost control and landed itself into his embrace. The series of events unraveled too rapidly that either side was unable to see everything clearly. However, through their instincts, when both of them came close to each other, they realized something and immediately held back their attacks. As the soft body landed into his embrace, Difui could smell a familiar flowery scent of a young lady, and he immediately froze. His heart was beating feverishly. The young lady in his embrace was in fact Gu Shijie. She was taken aback while having both arms supporting herself against his chest. She looked up and their gazes met each other. The two of them froze for a couple of seconds. Difui was in disbelief, almost thinking that he was in a dream. Shijie. The girl in his embrace was Gu Shijie, the person he had been thinking about, and was certain he would not be able to see again. She looked rather disheveled, her sweat almost drenching her clothing, and a few strands of hair were stuck to her face. She looked like she had been working really hard for the past couple of hours. Never in his wildest dreams would he have expected Gu Shijie to greet him. His body froze, and both his arms remained static by his side. For a moment he gave no response. Gu Shijie was confident that Difui and Long Moyen would meet. But she never thought she would meet him so soon. The familiar scent, the familiar feeling. It all came back to her at once. After all that suffering, she finally found a respite. All her resentment immediately gushed out from her chest to her throat, and to her eyes. Her nose twitched and her eyes reddened. Before she could think on her feet, her hands reached frantically for his clothes. Difui. She was calling for his name, trying to say something, but it was as if her throat was blocked by a duck's egg. She was unable to utter any more words. She was still full of fury as she rushed out. Gu Shijie certainly did not expect to run into Difui's embrace. Her mixed emotions made her feel as if her heart was going to burst out of her chest. She was thinking of pushing him away aggressively, but also thinking of latching onto him passionately. She did not know what to do, but she held on to his shirt until her fingers turned pale. Gu Shijie was rather disappointed when she saw Difui. He had been standing straight while his hands were by his side all the while. He did not even hug her. She felt a little embarrassed and wanted to let go, but was also reluctant to do so. Difui finally got to his senses. However, he was still in disbelief. His first response was that Long Moyen had hidden a clone of Shijie. Difui would not want to embrace a clone of Gu Shijie. His first response was to push her away, but he did not do so. Upon closer observation, he realized that the person in his embrace was lively, smelled good, could cry, could be angry, and was trying to break the wizardry barrier. Now that she was grasping his shirt, her beautiful face portrayed both delight and resentment. Her pair of eyes were locked on him, covered in tears. That was really her. But her body had only been buried not long ago. She would not have reincarnated within such a short period of time, right? Difui was confused for a moment. However, he was too ecstatic at that moment. Although her presence was rather illogical, he was utterly sure that it was her. No one else could imitate Shijie. Shijie. He cried for her in a hoarse voice. Finally, when she was about to leave his embrace, he held on to her, with both his arms locked on her waist. Both of his arms were locked tightly around her, until she felt a tinge of pain around her waist. His body was even shivering, and his heart was thumping like a drum in his chest. Gu Shijie laid her head before his chest. Listening to his heart thumping, she suddenly felt secure. She loved listening to his heartbeat. The stronger it was, the better. Within Gu Zijie's heart was countless of things, but after he hugged her, she cried out, "Difui, you bastard." In the world, no one else would dare call Difui a bastard. And even though she cursed him, Difui felt that it sounded more pleasant than any melody in the world. He laughed. "Yes, I am a bastard." On his lips was a smile, and in his eyes were tears. His shivering voice revealed his frantic emotions. "Shijie, I never thought I could see you again. I never thought I could hug you again, truly feeling your presence with all my heart." The two of them held tightly onto each other, each of them not wanting to loosen up. Gu Shijie looked around and she saw Long Moyen from the corner of her eyes. As Di Fui was no longer in control of his sword matrix, Long Moyen had been freed. At the moment he was looking at Di Fui and her with a rather pale complexion. The fact that Gu Shijiao and Di Fui could break his wizardry barrier so easily amazed him. It also alerted Long Moyen that he was no longer as powerful as he thought. He knew that a head-on battle against the two of them was not the right move at the moment. So, as he freed himself from the sword matrix, oblivious to the pain on his body which likened to that caused by a scorpion's sting, he took 2 steps backward and fled immediately. Long Moyen, don't go. Gu Shijiao did not want him to leave. Releasing Di Fui's shirt, she wielded her sword. Thinking of going after setting me up in a trap? No room for that. As she was about to rush over, Di Fui held on to her. Shijiao, have a rest, and let me do it. He pulled her to his back, and a sword immediately formed in his palm. The emergence of this sword came along with a thunderous sound. Gu Shijiao did not want to fight against him either. Hence, she stood behind him obediently. He deceived me and confined me here. Di Fui, help me get my revenge. I will. Di Fui caressed her hair, and the sword in his palm grew more striking. Gu Shijiao turned around and looked for a stone. She sat down on it to watch the battle. To break the wizardry barrier, she had almost used up all her spiritual powers. Hence, she was rather drained at the moment, and cold sweat was still breaking out on her forehead. Since Di Fui was there was no need for her to drain it even more. Long Moyen's countenance changed. He would not be able to counter Di Fui at the moment since he had been injured. He took a few steps backward. My lord, I did not have any bad intention for confining her. I was just doing it on God's order. She should not have reincarnated so quickly. I was afraid that she would be condemned and punished again. Hence, I deliberately contained her here temporarily and asked her to take a good rest. Di Fui lost his breath for a while. Through Long Moyen's words, he could tell that Gu Shijiao had already known the truth. He could not help but steal a glance at Gu Shijiao. Gu Zijia's small face was still pale, but her pair of eyes were as dazzling as ever. She was disgusted by Long Moyen's words and said bluntly, Long Moyen, you were just afraid that I would meet him and you would be of no use. You had even poisoned me. Luckily, I did try to spit out the poison from within my body, or else I would have lost all my external abilities. Long Moyen could barely respond this time. That poison will not hurt you and will not kill you. I just wanted you to stay inside. Before he finished defending himself, a storm seemed to be brewing from above. Above Long Moyen's head was a sword matrix that looked more complex than the one before. Following the movement of the sword matrix was Di Fui's nonchalant and cold voice. Long Moyen, conspiring against the future lord will make you deserving of a death penalty. Stop talking nonsense if you are a man. And if you can free yourself from this sword matrix, I will let you go. The sword matrix set up by Di Fui this time was clearly different from the one he set up before. The one just now was just a trial and could not kill him. It would only let him have a taste of the infliction this one would bring. Each streak of light emanating from the sword was like lightning which could split the mountain ranges apart. Each of them was directing itself towards Long Moyen. Long Moyen was visibly terrified. Long Moyen was screwed. The earlier sword matrix still allowed him to spare some of his attention on Di Fui. He even had a brief conversation with the man. However, the sword matrix before his eyes would require his undivided attention. He could not even afford to blink. Long Moyen was known for his proficiency in setting up various types of matrices. He was a famous character in the upper bound. After regaining his memories, he had leveled up rapidly. He thought that with his ability, he would be able to emulate or even defeat Di Fui once they met on the battleground. Even if he could not defeat Di Fui, he could at least hold his ground against him. After all, his counterpart was nearing retirement and would probably be weaker now. What is more, he could even be at a level inferior to him. However, after having a taste of his first sword matrix, he erased those silly ideas right away. It would be naive to think that Di Fui only had different types of sword matrices up his arsenal of tricks. Now that Long Moyen was within the second sword matrix, he finally understood that all that he had seen before were just glimpses of Di Fui's abilities. How terrifying. Gu Shijie was sitting on a rock while watching Di Fui. He was standing there with his fingers twirling to orchestrate the sword matrix. His white robe appeared to be dancing like a snowstorm, which appeared fascinating. She was reluctant to lift her gaze off him. Although he was wearing a mask, Gu Shijie still felt that he had become much thinner. Apparently, he had not been doing well lately. Thinking of the days when she could feel her soul mingling with him in the carriage, she felt a twitch in her heart. All his sorrow she could, in fact, be seen in his eyes. Apparently, he would go so far for her. Apparently, she was the one and only in his heart. This majestic man stood there with his robe dancing in the wind as if bring with it an aura that was extremely dazzling. Such a person like him is only left with 3 months of life. Could that be that true? Gu Shijie could not allow it. She would attempt to increase his lifespan at all cost. She had fate on her side several times. She hoped that she would be so lucky once more. God's wishes had it that she only reincarnate 38 years later. Had she not reincarnated in advance? As long as she hoped for it, and as long as she tried hard enough, she could probably think of a way to let him live. Gu Shijie sat there, pondering these thoughts with a racing heart and mind. All she could think of was that she needed to let him stay. My lord. Firmament stone appeared out of nowhere and dropped on her wrist. It then latched onto her excitedly. My lord, I never thought you would complete your reincarnation so quickly. I missed you so much. I thought that I would still need to linger in the world for tens of years to see you again. Gu Shijie ignored it. Both of them did not have any sort of telepathy between them. How sad was it for her to put her hope on it? Firmament stone filled her mind with light-hearted words of greeting, especially those that one would say having not met each other for some time. However, Gu Shijie did not even reply. It was shocked. My lord, do not tell me that you are not aware that I am speaking to you. God, you really cannot tell. Is your body a clone? Master, Master, please respond to me, Master. The firmament stone felt like shrieking. A faint smile appeared on Gu Shijie's lips as she continued to observe the battle. She wanted to let the firmament stone suffer a little, and let it feel how it is like to lose all modes of communication again. She directed her gaze toward the battlefield. Long Moyen had endured countless wounds on his body that rendered him in a state of disgrace. Gu Shijie felt as though justice was being served. She had nothing against Long Moyen at first. When she first knew him, she had saved him and had even gone out with him once under Gu Zhixian's arrangements. She assumed that they would be acquaintances at the very least, and had never expected that he would stab her in the back when she tried to break free from the wizardry barrier. If she did not know the spell to remove the barrier, who knows how long she would have been trapped in his bamboo house. Maybe he even would have locked her up forever to maintain his power. Although she swore to take vengeance on Long Moyen when she made her escape, she knew that her spiritual power was far too depleted. There was no chance for her to defeat him in her current state. Gu Shijie would probably have to teleport away for her own safety. She had already concocted an escape plan. Although it was shoddy, it was the best she had given the circumstances. She had not expected to bump into Di Fui once she got out. Upon seeing him, she heaved a huge sigh of relief. Sitting here now, she felt a strong sense of soreness and limpness in her body. Those were the symptoms of spiritual power depletion. Just when she was contemplating whether to move the boulder below her to a nearby tree, a rocking chair suddenly appeared beside her out of the blue. Gu Shijie was speechless. She looked toward Di Fui, but he was still wielding his sword and slashing at Long Moyen. Without looking at her, he said, "The boulder's cold. Rest on the chair instead." How considerate. Gu Shijie got up and laid on the chair. The rocking chair swayed some of her fatigue away as she continued to observe the battle. As she possessed much expertise in battle, she was able to discern that Long Moyen was already at his strength's end, and would be sliced into pieces after 20 or 30 more moves. Wait. Sliced into pieces. Long Moyen belonged to the upper bound, and seems to have a higher status than Fairy Queen Li. When Di Fui dealt with Fairy Queen Li, he incurred a heavenly punishment as a consequence. Though being only barely involved in the matter, Gu Shijie was also punished and almost became a monster. If Long Moyen was slaughtered now, Di Fui would definitely be punished again. He did not have much time left to begin with, so could he still afford any punishments? Just when this thought came across her mind, the firmament stone flew to Di Fui's side and showed the following words on its screen. Lord, you can't kill this person. He belongs to the upper bound and does not deserve death for his crime. If you kill him, a stern heavenly punishment will befall upon you. You can't suffer anymore. Seemingly knowing the grave danger he is in, Long Moyen shouted, My lord, I harbor no ill intent toward her and only wanted to lock her up for a while. Even if I have sinned, I do not deserve death. You would anger the upper bound if you kill me. I am the prince of the upper bound, the brother-in-law of the king of the upper bound. Long Moyen quickly revealed his status in the upper bound for his protection. Unfortunately, because his attention was diverted while he was speaking, his body was slashed a few more times, and he almost had one of his limbs sliced off. Di Fui appeared not to have heard what he was saying and only pursed his lips lightly. He was not used to threats. Besides, he had only 3 months left to live anyway, and he needs to prepare the new lord in this brief period. So even people from the upper bound would not dare to lay a finger on him. The people from upper bound are afraid of the heavenly laws too, primarily because of the retribution that breaking the laws entailed. Long Moyen had already shown signs of abuse of power before assuming the mantle of the lord. Once he gets into power, he would only see Gu Shijie as an obstacle to his megalomania and eliminate her. Even if Long Moyen went against the arrangements of the heavenly order, he did not dare to make a move against Gu Shijie in broad daylight. However, if he imprisoned Gu Shijie as a political move, he would not act in discordance the heavenly laws. Di Fui could not leave a person like him alive. If not, Gu Shijie would be in huge trouble later on, and he would potentially become the second demon and wreak havoc upon the land. Once Di Fui activates his killing intent, not even the gods can stop him. His attacks grew swifter despite the threat. Don't kill him, you cannot be punished again, Gu Shijie interjected. It doesn't matter. The heavenly laws cannot restrain me anymore, and leaving him alive would only bring calamity to this earth. Di Fui's voice was piercingly cold. Before he finished speaking, one of Long Moyen's arms was already missing. With his remaining arm, Long Moyen tried to evade the rapid strikes of Di Fui's sword like the frantic prey of a hunter. His face was pallid with despair. I won't be of any harm to her. Long Moyen shouted. I won't cause any trouble to her. If you don't believe me, I will swear an oath upon my life. I believe in the dead more than I believe in oaths. The dead make more convincing promises, Di Fui remarked with chilling apathy. Long Moyen was out of words. Before he knew it, one of his legs was chopped off as well. He could not stand anymore and dropped to the ground. He could only look at the flurry of slashes pouring down in his direction without mercy. There were no blind spots in Di Fui's attacks. Long Moyen had nowhere to hide. With the shroud of death hanging over his head, he shut his eyes in despair. The storm of blades that he had prepared himself for did not land upon him. His heart skipped a beat, and he opened his eyes only to see Gu Shijie standing beside Di Fui with her hand pressing upon his thumb. So the multitude of swords hung above Long Moyen's head, ready to descend at any time. Long Moyen was frozen in fear and did not move. Swear an oath, Gu Shijie said coldly. She was holding Di Fui's finger, which he was vital for spellcasting. Long Moyen's eyes lit up. He knew that it was his only chance for survival, and immediately swore an oath. I, Long Moyen, swear never to do any harm to Gu Shijie and take revenge on anyone in my life. If I break this oath, may I be subject to death by 1,000 cuts and suffer in the deepest layer of hell for eternity. As soon as he finished his sentence, the sky rumbled with thunder, signifying the sanction of the oath. He looked at Di Fui full of hope. Will this placate your worries? Di Fui had a ghost of a smile on his face. I will believe in you for this one time. However, you have imprisoned the new lord by your own accord and poisoned her as well. Punishment is still necessary. Before he finished his words, his swords crashed on the ground. Long Moyen did not get to leave as he wanted to. Di Fui crippled his external abilities and threw him in his bamboo shed. Of course, Difui did not forget to set a barrier around the bamboo shed that was more powerful than the one that Long Moyen had set before. Long Moyen would have a hard time breaking past the barrier, even if his severely incapacitated external abilities recovered to its full strength. He had imprisoned Gu Shijie with a barrier before, so now he will get a taste of his own medicine. The barrier that he had incarcerated Gu Shijie with had an effective period of 40 years, but the one that Difui set could last for 1,000 years. In other words, he will be confined for at least 1,000 years. He wallowed in remorse and despair, but he could do nothing about it and only silently wait for the period to pass. After settling the matter with Long Moyen, Difui sheathed his sword and looked to his loved one beside him. Shijie. He did not know how to face her at that moment as she had shown indifference to him before the incident. What was worse was that he had not much time left to live. Looking at her figure standing beside him, an unknown plethora of emotions simmered in his chest. He wanted to hold her tightly in his embrace, but something was holding him back. Gu Shijie looked up at him for a while and pouted her lips. Difui, aren't you going to hug me? There was a trace of grievance in her voice. She thought that the first thing that he would do was to hug her. To her surprise, he only stood and looked at her like an idiot. Difui tried to hide his misery from his face. Shijie, I won't be able to give you an eternity anymore. He would not be able to stay by her side for long, and would have to leave her by herself soon. He did not know what he should do given the current circumstances. Although he wanted to love her for the remainder of his life and not leave this world with any regrets, it would be a selfish act that would be too harmful to her. Gu Shijie understood his worries. Still, she could not help but feel wronged. She pursed her lips and asked, Difui, since you know that you won't live for long, why did you come to me in the first place? I had not fallen for you the first time we met. Difui felt a sting in his heart. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Gu Zijie's eyes were rimmed with red. You made me envious of a dead person. You made me feel like a substitute for Lan Jinka. You don't know how hurtful those times were for me. From that moment onwards, I started to hate myself and wish for death. Difui gripped his hands and suppressed his desire to embrace her. I'm sorry, I was a bastard. He feigned composure when he said those words, but his heart ached to the point of suffocation. The act of hurting her was worse than hurting himself. Gu Shijie looked at his arms. Although they were concealed in his sleeve, she could see their stiffness. She wanted to surrender herself in his embrace, but if he did not take the initiative to embrace her, how could she abate the grievances in her heart? She took a deep breath and continued to look up at him. Then, do you still want me? Difui's breath halted for a second. Of course he does. With all of his life. But he could not be that selfish anymore. Shijie, you already know about my situation. We aren't suitable to be alongside each other anymore. In these 3 months, I will pass to you everything I know. You want to be my master? In the last moments in your life, you want to be my master? No, I just want to pass some things on. Shijie, we don't have much time left. Difui, I should have been reincarnated 38 years later, but I was reborn earlier instead. Do you know why? Gu Shijie took a step towards him with her eyes locked on his. She would have to lay out the truth to him. Difui shook his head. He wanted to know the reason too. It was a miracle for Gu Shijie to be standing in front of him at this very moment. Until now, he still could not believe that it was real. Gu Shijie gazed down bashfully as she continued. In fact, I have been around you for some time. Huh. Difui was shocked as he glimpsed at her with a frown. I saw you wandering around the streets with my body. I saw you talking to it, and I know you've made many statues for me. I thought you were doing these in order to resurrect Lan Jinka. I was so depressed at first. I wanted to leave you and I didn't want to see you anymore. However, I just couldn't leave. I had no idea why I was following you around even though I was so sad. Gu Zijie's voice sounded hoarse and her lashes were trembling. Difui's fingers clenched his fists tightly as he tried to suppress his desire to hug her. I'm sorry, Gu Shijie shook her head. Initially, I thought it was because of the body and I thought I couldn't leave the body. Later on, I realized it was not the case. One day, You went off for errands, but you didn't bring the body. I was still following you around. I could not be more than 20 meters away from you. I soon realized that the reason I couldn't leave is that my only obsession is you. Difui was ecstatic yet melancholy at the same time. Shijio, I thought you had someone else in your heart, but I still wanted to stay by your side as I couldn't let go of the memories we shared. Honestly, I do feel embarrassed about it, but I couldn't control myself. Gu Shijio paused for a moment. After following you around for a few days, I finally realized the one you wanted to resurrect was not Lan Jinka, but me. Do you know that I was so happy that I couldn't stop spinning around you? Suddenly, Gu Shijio wrapped her arms around him. Difui was stiff. He wanted to push her away, but he could not let her go. While he was still idling, Gu Zijia's little hand already sneaked into his shirt. That was harassment. The firmament stone quickly closed its eyes. He did not expect its master to be so aggressive. In fact, Gu Shijio was not harassing Difui. She stretched her hand into his storage space and took out a few wooden dolls. All those wooden dolls were of Gu Shijio. They all looked so real. Gu Shijio lifted the wooden dolls. I saw that you made these every day. I knew you were very sad. I was very angry with you because I couldn't understand why you had to push me away since you loved me so much. Why did you hurt me? Why did you force me to leave? I just couldn't figure it out. I wanted to ask you, but you just couldn't see me and couldn't feel me. Suddenly, Firmament Stone interrupted. Master, were you in the tavern when the Lord made a table full of dishes? You took the prawn, didn't you? Gu Shijio immediately glared at it. Do you not feel embarrassed to bring this up? I thought you could sense me. Hence, I was frantically trying to communicate with you. Sadly, you ran away. The firmament stone curved its body a little. I thought it was a ghost. I was terrified by the wind. Difui sighed. Indeed, I felt you were around me, but I couldn't find your soul no matter what it read. Gu Shijio shook her head. I think I was not considered as a spirit that time. I'm not sure what I was at that moment. I just couldn't feel my body. Perhaps the credit temple you built for me really worked. Gu Shijio shook her head. I'm not sure how to classify myself either because I could not feel my body at the initial stages. Perhaps the credit temple you built for me worked. I slowly gained my 5 senses, and eventually, I could feel my body and even move my limbs. In fact, I was very happy. I thought I could stand in front of you one day in the future, if I continued to improve so that I can get answers from you. I followed you around, and I was very sad when I saw that you were depressed. However, I felt you deserved it because you hurt me so badly. I even thought it was quite nice to be able to see you so often. Unfortunately, you could not see me. Thus, you would not even know even if I was lying in your arms. I practiced and thought that I would be reborn again if things continued to improve. I thought it would take around 80 to 100 years. Gu Zijia's voice sounded hoarse. At that time, I thought we would still have plenty of time. Anyhow, I would be willing to stand by your side even as a ghost. However, to my surprise, I was trapped in the temple and could not find a way out. Gu Shijio pointed in the direction of a celestial master Gu temple. I remember we went to the temple together that day. However, I was distracted for a moment, and when I looked back, you were already gone with my body, and I was left behind. The firmament stone was alarmed by what it heard. Master, I remember this. We could not sense your existence since that day. The Lord was very depressed, and he used many spells to trace you. He even designed some light features to lure you. In fact, he almost lost his mind as he made a table full of dishes every day, and he even thought it was you whenever the wind blew. I'm sorry, we did not know that you were left behind and trapped in there. Why did you not look for us? The Lord had stayed in the town for the entire day that day. Gu Shijio glared at it. Do you think that I did not want to find you? I was trapped. What happened? Who trapped you here? Difui looked furious. Gu Shijio shook her head. No idea. There was an extra wizardry barrier in the temple that was specially made to trap me here, because other pilgrims could go in and out freely but I could not. I could not get more than 3 miles away from the temple, and there was a voice that was continuously speaking to me from right beside my ear. Gu Shijiu then explained her situation when she was trapped. Di Fui glimpsed at the firmament stone when Gu Shijiu mentioned about the guardian of the heavenly order. The firmament stone immediately shrunk its body. It was not me. Icily, Di Fui said. I know you're not capable enough. The firmament stone was speechless. Gu Shijiu slightly pursed her lips as she glimpsed at Di Fui. I knew from the guardian of the heavenly order that I was set to be the new lord who would replace you. She continued with a trembling voice. I really did not expect that only one of us could survive. Do you know what was my first reaction when I knew it? I did not want to be reborn again. I don't want to replace you. I'd rather everything remain the same. Di Fui's heart was in pain. He certainly understood how difficult it was to learn of such information. Shijiu, my departure can never be changed, regardless of whether or not you are reborn. Gu Shijiu nodded. Yeah, that voice told me the same thing. It told me I would only be reborn after 38 years later, and you will die after 4 months. Chapter 1772. Gu Shijiu leaned against a tree. Di Fui, you do know that I almost collapsed when I learned of that information, right? One of Di Fui's hands pressed on her shoulder. Gu Shijiu was firm even though her face was still pale. He could see that she was scared and vulnerable at this time. He sighed. Shijiu, I understand. Gu Shijiu shook her head and fixed her eyes on him. No, you don't know how I feel. Di Fui, I know you are doing this for me because you don't want me to be sad after you die. Hence, you're willing to betray me and make me hate you. However, you still do know me. I almost went crazy. The only thing in my head was to see you. I must see you. I really could not imagine what would happen if I did not see you before you left. Involuntarily, her voice turned sharper and louder. Thinking about that crazy moment, she would probably go insane if she could not manage to see him in time. She even planned to join the devil instead of the heavenly order, if she could not see him when she escaped. She did not only threaten that voice once. She told that voice she would definitely join the devil if she could not see him before he dies. Perhaps her craziness terrified the master of that voice, and the heavenly order grew worried that she would become a crazy lord. Hence, the voice quickly taught her the fastest way to condense her body. Since I learned the strategy, I tried my best to cultivate it. I didn't sleep. She teared. It was extremely suffering, just like breaking all of my bones, and then reassembling them again every single day. It was as though I was dancing on a blade every second, and I felt like dying from the pain. However, I did not give up. The pain was nothing serious compared to the desire of seeing you again. I motivated myself every day. I calculated the days that I needed to get back to you. I felt that time was flying by too quickly even though I suffered so much every day. I was so worried that I'd missed the chance to see you again. Every morning when the sun rose, I did not want it to go down because I knew that you would have 1 day less to live, and I'll have 1 day less to see you. Gu Shijiu involuntarily choked while speaking. Di Fui, I'm terrified. I cannot imagine a life where I cannot see you again. I was so unlucky that I bumped into Long Moyen and got tricked by him right after I successfully got my body. He even wanted to trap me for 3 months, just because he did not want me to see you. Di Fui, I'm exhausted. I haven't slept for a month. I couldn't let him trap me there, because all my efforts would be in vain. Therefore, I struck the wizardry barrier with all my energy even though I was already exhausted. Di Fui was noticeably uncomfortable. Shijiu. His blood was boiling in his body. This girl gave her all for him. Finally, he lifted his arms and pulled her into his embrace. He hugged her tightly and never wanted to let go anymore. Finally, Gu Shijiu returned to this embrace. All the depression gushed up to her eyes, and she finally collapsed. She cried while she pushed him several times. I've put so much effort to escape, but what did you tell me just now? You don't want me anymore. You just want to teach me your kung fu. Di Fui, if this is what you want, why the *LL did I put so much effort to come out? Anyway, there will be someone who could teach me after a few decades. She lived in pain and fear every day when she was trapped in the wizardry barrier. She would have collapsed and given up a long time ago if she did not have such a determined mind. Although she had finally overcome the obstacles, All her depression, guilt, and fear were waiting for its comforter. She needed a warm embrace right now. However, you can bet that she would be very picky about who gives it to her. The one who comforted Gu Shijie must be Di Fui. She did not want anyone else. She could be a tough woman in front of everyone. However, she was just like a little girl who was crying and throwing her tantrum in front of him, because she had been treated unfairly. Since he did not want to hug her, then she did not need his hug anymore. Therefore she pushed him away. Di Fui, you don't want me anymore. Don't touch me. I don't want your embrace. She applied quite a strong force, but she still could not push Di Fui away. The harder she pushed, the tighter he hugged. Her tears were like burnt charcoal, leaving numerous marks on his heart, until he sensed a squeezy feeling in his chest. He hugged her tightly, to the extent that he could not wait for their bodies to become one again. Shijie. He called her name with a hoarse voice. He lowered his head and kissed the tears on her face. I'm so sorry, Shijie. I never intended to abandon you. You're the only one I want. No, you just said you didn't want me. You wanted to draw a line between us. You didn't even want me to be your disciple. She gasped as she cried. I'm sorry, Shijie. I'm sorry. He hugged her tightly and patted her back to comfort her. At this moment, he was no longer the Almighty Lord, and she was not the cold and scary new Lord either. He hugged her in his embrace and kissed her cheek, her eyes, her nose tip. Gu Shijie buried her head in his arms as she cried. It was as if she was letting out all the depression from the unfair treatment she had since they first broke up. The firmament stone was completely stunned as it watched the scene. In its eyes, Gu Shijie was always a calm and intelligent girl, and she would always overcome any obstacle she faced. She had a toughness to her which no other lady would have at this age. The firmament stone was shocked and did not dare to blink anymore, because that was the first time it witnessed her losing her control and crying like that. It took a glimpse at the Lord and realized he was tearing. Although he did not cry, his voice was hoarse when he tried to comfort her. The Lord was obsessed with cleanliness. However, he did not feel disgusted even though her face was covered with tears, and he even kissed away her tears. At that moment, they were so close to each other to the point that there was not even a tiny space to fit a needle. The firmament stone suddenly realized its existence was annoying them at this moment. Thus, it quietly coiled around Gu Zijie's wrist, and pretended it was a dead rock to hide. The firmament stone had a pair of sharp eyes. It could sense that one of Gu Zijie's hands was actually pulling Di Fui's clothes, although she was pushing him away. Sigh. Women, oh women. No wonder there was a saying that women are dishonest. Ironically, it seemed to be the truth. The firmament stone felt lament. It looked around and realized they were on a quiet hill. People hardly came here as it was very far away from the town. At the moment, no one else was there to watch them. The firmament stone heaved a sigh of relief. Yet, right before its eyes was the current Lord and the future Lord. Their mighty image would be completely ruined if someone ran into this scene. Luckily, no one was there. The sky turned dark, and there were a few stars that hung above the sky. After watching them for a while, the firmament stone felt that it was not that romantic to cuddle in the dark. It began to ponder, and felt it was time for it to perform. It owed its master for failing to sense her presence before. Wanting to impress Gu Shijie, the firmament stone flew into the air, and shone above the two of them like a bright star. It was glowing in 7 colors, and it looked very similar to a disco ball on the dance floor. It was giving its best to shine. However, a sleeve rubbed over it, and the place went dark again as though there was a short circuit. Suddenly, it fell and crashed on a rock at the corner. It made a very loud sound when it crashed, just like an egg falling on the floor. However, the two of them were hugging each other passionately, and did not even intend to check on it. Its master did not look at it at all. The firmament stone was very angry. It knew who the culprit was. Di Fui. It was his sleeve. The firmament stone shone again, and was ready to fly up again. Suddenly, it received a blow again, and fell onto the ground. After settling the big light bulb, Di Fui lowered his head and dropped a kiss on her cheek. This was followed by numerous strong and passionate kisses. As he kissed her, A familiar fragrance made her heart race again. Since their breakup half a year ago, he did not even kiss her once, even though he did hug her before. As they kissed each other, all the depression gushed out, and tears rolled down her cheek again. Gu Shijie was unfamiliar with this feeling. She felt weak and vulnerable, and she never expected that she would cry like a little girl in front of him one day. "Shijie, it's all my fault," Di Fui said with a hoarse voice as he whispered beside her lips. Her tears rolled onto their cuddling tongues. It was a little salty and bitter. Gu Shijie tasted her tears and felt embarrassed. She lifted her head slightly to avoid his lips. She gently pushed him away so that she could apply a cleaning spell on herself. She did not want to kiss him with tears all over her face. That was embarrassing. However, she was really exhausted and felt tired halfway through the spell. Di Fui held her little hand as he looked into her eyes. Her eyes were swollen, and her pupils looked like two shining black gems. In fact, she was quite embarrassed at that moment. She just broke the wizardry barrier with sweaty clothes, and then cried until her nose was red. However, that was the genuine side of her. So, Di Fui was touched. He kissed on her eyes. "It's all right, this is just fine." She struggled in his embrace. No, she did not want to stay in his embrace with a dirty face. Girls were always proud of their appearance. She needed to take care of her image in front of him. She did not want to show him her dirty face. She would have a phobia. Di Fui cast a spell for her, and she was finally clean now. However, her eyes were still swollen, and her red nose might need something a little extra. Gu Shijie touched her hair and realized it was messy. Gosh. Her image was completely gone. She wanted to see him in her best appearance. Therefore, she could not be bothered to stay in his embrace anymore. She quickly pushed him away and tried to fix her hair. She stretched her hands into her storage space to get a comb. However, it was only then that she realized she did not bring anything since her body was newly formed. Chapter 1775. Most of Gu Zhijia's belongings were in her storage bag that was attached to her original body. In fact, there were some items in the firmament stone storage space, but all of them were valuable items and medicines rather than daily necessity. Without being asked, Di Fui suddenly got a comb in his palm out of nowhere. "Is this what you need?" Gu Shijie took a glimpse and realized it was the comb he made for her when they were living in the Forbidden Land after they got married. She had been using it for 8 years. He got the comb well polished until it became shiny. However, when they broke up, she returned everything he gave to him, including the comb. Gu Shijie was surprised that he had it with him. In fact, she liked the comb very much. Thus, she wanted to take it. However, Di Fui let her sit on a futon instead. "Here, let me fix it for you." Gu Shijie patiently waited. Her new body was probably better than her old one because both her skin and hair were extremely beautiful. Her skin was fair and moist, while her hair was as smooth as silk. Although it was rather messy now, it was still very smooth and shiny. Di Fui had helped her to comb her hair before, hence he was quite familiar with it. When the comb rubbed on her scalp, it was like massaging her head. Suddenly, Gu Shijie thought of a saying: "When the first brush reaches the tip, the newlywed couple will respect each other. When the second brush reaches the tip, the newlywed couple would love each other until they are old." Her chest felt tight all of a sudden. She knew that they would never experience that, and they could never grow old together. Gu Shijie felt like crying at the thought of it, but she remained calm and kept it in. She wanted to spend his last 3 months with him wisely, so she decided to put everything else aside. Certainly, she still needed a solution to make him stay. Since she has made so many miracles, perhaps this would also come to fruition. She could not lose him. In fact, she was extremely exhausted because she had not been resting for a month. With Di Fui now in her sights, her worries had now faded. Therefore, she began to feel sleepy. When Di Fui was combing her hair, she felt that her eyelids were very heavy. Di Fui made a nice hairstyle for her. He got a mirror and placed it in front of her. "Baby, look. Is it nice?" Gu Shijie did not answer, but her body slumped to one side. Di Fui was shocked and quickly held her. He took a look and realized her eyes were closed. Luckily, she was just asleep. Her eyelashes were still wet, and a shadow was formed below her eyes. There were 2 light circles above her cheek. Apparently, she was exhausted. He was relieved that she could finally get some rest. Thus, he bent to carry her. Her hand immediately held his top, and she buried her head into his embrace. She used to wrap her arms around his waist every time he carried her. Even when she was asleep, there were some habits which were really difficult to get rid of. But the half a year apart did force her to change. And to his dismay, she no longer hugged his waist this time. She left one of her hands hanging beside her body when he carried her. It looked quite pitiful for her to be carried that way. Shijio. Depressingly, Difui felt something was stuck in his throat as he looked at her. He lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. Her lips smelled as good as usual. That was something he missed all the while, and a slight contact was enough to make his heart race. Shijio, what should I do to minimize the pain you would go through? His fingers lied on her wrist to check her pulse. A moment later he frowned. Shijio fell asleep and had a nightmare. She dreamt of herself suddenly falling from the sky. In her dream, she saw people who had already passed away such as Long Fan, Mo Zhao, Rong Jialua, Rong Che, Rong Yan. She even dreamt about Gu Tianqing and Gu Tianchao. All of them either glared at her or tried to kill her. Some even exploded in front of her, and their blood splattered everywhere. They then gathered together again and continuously screamed at her, "Return my life!" Gu Shijio was terrified. In her dream, Mo Zhao was extremely annoying because he could not stop changing his appearance between Rong Che and himself. Gu Shijio had walked a short journey with Rong Che in her dream. Rong Che sighed. "Shijio, I've never intended to hurt you, but you just couldn't let me go." In her dream, Rong Che looked very much like the person she had met years ago when she first saw him. He had a paper fan in his hand just like all those young, handsome masters. However, Gu Shijio suddenly recalled that he was actually Mo Zhao. She quickly took a step back while Rong Che morphed into Mo Zhao. Mo Zhao had an injured appearance with bloodstains all over his body. He laughed aloud as he spoke. "Shijio, you'll regret. No one can change the heavenly laws, including you." There was no hatred in his gaze but sympathy. "You'll regret." She then saw Long Fan wearing modern clothes. He was wearing a white robe, and behind him was a huge science lab. Inside the lab, there were many crystal coffins filled with a type of solution, and each was occupied by a human. Sweat broke out from Gu Zijia's skin when she finally saw the humans inside the crystal coffin. Those were all clones of her. She could not even count how many there were. She immediately leaped 2 steps backward. Long Fan turned around and smiled at her. "Shijio, I'm waiting for your return. You're mine." Gu Shijio was extremely angry. Hence, she launched an attack. "I'm not yours. Long Fan, you're insane." All the crystal coffins cracked, and the clone bodies opened their eyes and sat up. In a blink of an eye, the clone bodies had approached her, and they were all wearing the same clothes as her. Smilingly they said, "We're all Gu Shijio. We'll replace you." Without waiting for another second, she took out her sword and sliced the clone bodies as if she was chopping vegetables. Blood spilled all over the place. Those girls did not seem to die in peace though. They still whispered beside Gu Zijia's ears. "Gu Shijio, killing us is equivalent to killing yourself. You'll regret." The wind suddenly blew harshly in the area. Long Fan and his science lab disappeared while Gu Shijio realized she was in a miserable desert now, and she was going to be cooked under the hot sun. She felt extremely uncomfortable and thirsty due to the scorching heat, and she tried her best to look for water. She saw an oasis further ahead, and she quickly ran over happily. Gu Shijio saw Difui in the oasis. He was sitting beside a geyser as he waved at her, while she was running toward him. She finally heaved a sigh of relief. "Here, drink it," he said as he delivered some water to her. He sighed as he watched her finish drinking the water. "Shijio, it's almost time for me to go. Could you please forget about me? Would be best for you." Suddenly, her head went blank as if someone had struck her really hard. She quickly tugged his sleeve. "I thought you have 3 more months?" Why are you leaving all of a sudden? He remained silent as he glimpsed at her gently. She refused to let go of his sleeve. Difui. This is not funny at all. He ran his fingers through her hair and sighed. Shijio, we are disobeying the heavenly laws and karma is about to come. Hence, I've lost the 3 months of my lifespan as well. Impossible. Guzijia's voice sounded hoarse. You still need to teach me all your skills. How could you die? You haven't taught me anything. Shijio, someone from heaven will come and teach you. Take good care of yourself. My only regret is not being able to take care of you for the rest of your life. His voice was getting softer as a 7-colored ray began to engulf his body, while she watched him slowly fade away in front of her own eyes. No. She screamed and rushed forward. She wanted to hug him. However, he faded and finally disappeared from her embrace. She tried her best to make him stay, but she failed. Difui. She screamed aloud with a lot of sweat covered on her forehead. Gu Shijio sat on the bed and idled for a short while. She was sitting on her own bed in the National Celestial Master's mansion. All the furniture remained the same, and even the yulon flower in the vase was still fresh as though she had never left. It was a sunny day and the sunlight shone into her room. The clock in her room looked shiny under the sunlight. Luo Zhanyu was anxiously looking at her from the opposite direction. Shijio, are you alright? Gu Shijio was still unable to absorb everything that just happened. Her heart was racing, and she was still a little slow-witted as she looked at Luo Zhanyu. Shijio? Shijio? Luo Zhanyu waved at her. Gu Shijio finally shifted her gaze to him. Why are you here? Luo Zhanyu sighed. Shijio, you've been sleeping for more than 24 hours. I'm so worried. She paused upon hearing what he said. Was that a dream? Was it a nightmare? She calmed herself and looked around, only to find that she was in her own bedroom. How did she return home? She could not recollect how much of her past was now a dream. She was a little confused and seemed to have recalled something. Where's Difui? She asked Luo Zhanyu as she held his hand. Luo Zhanyu rubbed his brows. Shijio, where have you been these days? You've gone missing for a month. Many people said you were with the Lord. However, I have never seen you. I wanted to find you, but the Lord was always in a hurry and always left before I arrived. He has been building credit temples for you. There were rumors saying the Lord intends to appoint you as his successor. Shijio, I'm confused. Difui came yesterday when he sent you home. He said you were exhausted and you would probably sleep for 2 days and 1 night. After that, he just left. Why, he said he would be back soon. Also, he instructed the 4 messengers to stay here with you. Luo Zhanyu was a bit naggy today, and went on and on about what had happened. Fortunately, Gu Shijio managed to extract a few key points from the big bunch of information. Firstly, both she and Mo Zhao died at the same time, but she managed to be reborn. Besides that, Difui built many credit temples for her, and those were real. It was not just a dream. Therefore, it was real that Difui still had 3 months to live. She jumped out of bed upon that realization. Did he tell you where he went? Luo Zhanyu shook his head. No, he didn't. He is always unpredictable, as you know. Shijio, what happened between you and him? I thought you had cancelled the engagement? What is going on? Gu Shijio took a deep breath. We had some misunderstandings before, but it has been resolved now. So both of you will get married? Luo Zhanyu quickly asked. Definitely. Gu Shijio answered right away. She wanted to marry him regardless of the time he had left. She would not let him create any excuses this time. Luo Zhanyu was shocked by her tone, because she sounded like she was going to threaten Difui to marry her. Gu Shijio was going crazy. Although Luo Zhanyu told her that Difui went out for an urgent errand, and that he would be back soon, she still felt insecure because she had not seen him. She was even more worried when she recalled the elements of the dream. She was really scared that Difui would just hide somewhere until he dies. She found the 4 messengers and realized that they had all lost so much weight in just over a month. Mu Feng heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her. The very first thing he said was, Shijio, I'm glad that you are alive. Do you know how sad our Lord was when you were away? God knows how happy and excited they were when they knew Gu Shijio had returned. Initially, all of them were executing their daily tasks as usual. Suddenly, they received an order from the Lord to rush to her mansion. In fact, they had no idea what happened, but they tried their best to rush over. All of them were stunned when they saw Gu Shijio sleeping on the bed. The Lord did not explain further, but told them to guard her with their lives, and that they should not leave her alone. He told them he had an urgent matter, and he would return after 2 days. Then he left right away. Therefore, 4 of them were left behind to safeguard Gu Shijio, who was sleeping soundly. Since all of them were men, it was certainly inconvenient for them to stay in her bedroom. Hence, they were standing separately at 4 different locations outside the bedroom. As the 4 of them were there in unison, even a mosquito could not fly in. Forget about an assassin. Gu Shijio was still upset. They already had so little time to spend together. Hence, they could not afford to waste a single second. What was so important that he had to do? She was anxious all day since she had the nightmare. She had slept for a day and a night, but Di Fui said he would only return after 2 days. Hence, she still needed to wait for another day. The only thing she knew for certain was that she would not be able to continue sleeping. Suddenly, she realized she did not know what to do while waiting for his return. In fact, there were plenty of things for her to do. However, she could not focus because she was anxious. Finally, the day had passed. However, Di Fui had not returned. Gu Shijio began to feel anxious and panicked. That was the first time she felt so worried in her life. Her heart was racing all day and she could barely focus or do anything about it. It was frustrating to be in that position. Luckily, Luo Zhanyu reminded her, "Shijio, do you want to pay your respects to His Majesty at the Royal Mausoleum?" Gu Shijio was shocked. His Majesty. Luo Zhanyu looked a little depressed. "Yeah, our emperor has passed away. His coffin has been transported back to be buried. Do you want to go since both of you were once very close friends?" Gu Shijio immediately stood up. "Yes, let's go." It was frequently raining during the festival of Qingming. Countless people were walking on the street, as if they were going to leave this world out of sheer sadness. It was drizzling as the Qingming festival was just around the corner. Gu Shijio was idling as she fixed her eyes at the tombstone in front of the royal mausoleum. Rong Jialua had a relatively high spiritual power. Perhaps he did not expect himself to have such a short lifespan because he did not build a mausoleum for himself in advance. Therefore, this one was built in a hurry. Rong Jialua was once her good friend who treated her genuinely. She did not expect him to have this kind of ending. He not only lost his physical body but his souls were all destroyed as well. He could never be reborn, and what was buried inside was just an unconscious shell. Gu Shijio was extremely depressed as she stood in front of the tombstone. Although it was drizzling, she did not use an umbrella or initiate any spells. She just let the rain fall on her hair and clothes. She was wondering whether Di Fui would have a tombstone 3 months later. Instantly, she felt as if her heart was being squeezed by someone. It was so painful to the extent that she did not dare to think about it anymore. There must be a way. There must. She would find it. No matter what it took. She could not imagine what she would do after Di Fui immortalizes. It would be like the end of the world to her. Suddenly, she realized why Di Fui had to push her away earlier. It would be impossible for her to accept this outcome. Perhaps she could one day accept his betrayal. However, she could never accept him being gone forever. 3 more months to go. What if she could not find the solution? Was she going to watch him immortalize? She lifted her head and looked at the dark clouds. There was not even a beam of sunlight today. It was already 2 days and a night, but Di Fui had yet to return. Would he just disappear forever like what she experienced in the nightmare? No way. She would not let this happen. She immediately jumped up. She could not continue waiting like this. She must find him. She turned around and was ready to go out. Suddenly, there was a shade above her head. A green umbrella covered her head, and the rain no longer fell on her hair. Why you didn't bring an umbrella? Are you planning to experience being soaked in the rain? She heard a familiar voice. She paused, turned around, and fixed her eyes at a smiling gaze. He was wearing a purple robe, but he did not wear a mask today. His eyes were as charming as usual, and she was always captivated by those charming eyes. The umbrella was a good complement to the scenery behind him, and the combination made a beautiful scene. Although he looked pale, he looked energetic when he tried to flirt with her. "Why are you looking at me this way? Have you turned stupid after soaking in the rain?" He applied a cleaning spell on her while he talked to her. Gu Shijie finally felt an overwhelming sense of relief. She even shed a tear in the process. She glared at him and remained silent as she pursed her lips. Di Fui was shocked. "What happened? Why do you look like you're going to cry?" He glanced around, and his gaze stopped at Rong Jiaoyuo's tombstone. He seemed to understand what was going on inside. "Shijie, you're sad for Rong Jiaoyuo?" In fact, before he could finish talking, Gu Shijie pulled his sleeve and walked away. "Follow me." Without hesitation, Di Fui followed her. The two of them arrived at a pavilion. It was built on the hill and surrounded by a plum forest. It was the plum flower season, hence the scene looked spectacular. Since it was drizzling and they were in the forest, no one would come to this place, and that made it a good place for a private date. The rain was gentle while the red petals on the ground occasionally flew up into the pavilion and onto their clothes. Originally, there was a stone table and bench in the pavilion. However, Di Fui has thrown it away because he felt it had worn out. He took a soft chair out from his storage space for Gu Shijie. Gu Shijie did not talk much, but she was idling as she looked at the plum forest outside the pavilion. Di Fui took a look at her complexion and realized she looked much better since she had a good sleep. However, there were some tiny capillaries at the bottom of her eyeballs. Apparently, she did have a good rest in the last 2 days. He first checked on her pulse, and then wanted to check her heartbeat. However, Gu Shijie suddenly grabbed his hand. Di Fui looked at her, and realized she was staring at him with her eyes widely opened. "Di Fui, when are you marrying me?" asked Gu Shijie. Di Fui was shocked. Before he could say anything, Gu Shijie asked again. "Seems like you still not willing to marry me, right?" Di Fui ran out of words. "Shijie, I know what you want to say." Gu Shijie interrupted him. "You want to say that you only have 3 months left to live and you don't want to tie me up so that I wouldn't be a widow after 3 months because you don't want to ruin my life. Am I right? Is this what you want to say? So, even after you know that I already know everything, you still want to avoid this, and that's what you mean by protecting me?" Di Fui remained silent. Gu Shijie was getting angrier as she talked. Hence she pulled Di Fui to the chair. She drew very close to him, and fixed her gaze right in front of his eyes. "Do you think what I said is right?" Both of them were extremely close now. They could even smell each other's breaths now. Di Fui was excited, but he tried to control his desires. He sighed. "Shijie." When he was about to explain, Gu Shijie suddenly pushed him down without any notice. She positioned herself on his body, right as he slumped onto the chair. Di Fui was alarmed. Although that was what he wanted all the while, something was wrong with her. Her face blushed as she lied on his body, and her eyes looked like it was burning as the plum forest was reflected in her pupils. Di Fui did not think too much but held one of her wrists to check her pulse. "Shijie, you're heaty recently. This is the side effect of condensing into an immortal body." Before he finished talking, his top had been torn. Di Fui was shocked and quickly held her wrist. "Shijie." Although she normally looked boyish and tough, she was quite shy in this area. Even though they had sex multiple times in their 8 years of marriage, he was always the director. Sometimes, he would seduce her to take the lead when he wanted something special. However, she was still shy and could not fully deliver it to him. Her face would normally turn into a tomato halfway while they had sex. This was the very first time Di Fui was pushed down by her. His entire top had been ripped off, which exposed his fair skin. It looked a little shiny under the moonlight, and was extremely seductive. Gu Shijie looked at him, and realized his palm was burning as he grabbed her wrist. He fixed his gaze at her as he lied on the chair, and his eyes were extremely charming as the moon was reflected in his pupils. This man was too handsome, and he was also extremely strong. However, he was dying soon. This thought instantly made Gu Shijie feel suffocated. Her eyes began to turn red. However, she smiled, and her fingers slowly drew circles on his chest. Di Fui, did you refuse to put me back to my original body, because you wanted me to keep my virginity after you immortalize? So that I can fall in love with someone else and spend the rest of my life with him? Di Fui remained silent. That was indeed his original objective. Gu Shijie narrowed her eyes with a light smile as she glimpsed at him. I got it right. However, does it not hurt you when you picture me having sex with someone else? Would you not feel jealous? Di Fui felt a slight discomfort in his chest. How could he not feel jealous? Although he planned to keep her virginity, he did not dare to imagine her falling in love with someone else. It would be too much for him to accept. She belonged with him. However, he did not want her to be alone forever just because of him. Therefore, he decided to remove all the memories she had about him and let her keep her virginity. Then, she could fall in love with someone else in the future without feeling guilty. Shijie. He held her hand. Her hand was smooth and delicate. Everything about her was perfect to him. But how long more could he hold this hand? How long more he could keep her in his embrace? The pain slowly gushed toward his heart, and he finally wrapped his arms tightly around her waist. Finally, both of them cuddled tightly. Gu Shijie was in tears, but this time with a smile. Have you heard about this saying? Once one has seen the best, the rest is not worth looking at. I've met you, and fell in love with you. Who else I can fall in love with in the future? Her fingertips were still drawing circles on his chest as she said with a hoarse voice. Di Fui, I wouldn't simply fall in love with someone. Similarly, I wouldn't simply marry anyone. Thus, even after you immortalize, I wouldn't fall in love with someone else. You can abandon me now or refuse to marry me now. You can even ignore me, neglect me, or even dump me. You can let this 3 months slide. I'll just take it as a lesson for overestimating myself. I'll just live with all these regrets and depression for the rest of my life. I won't force you. As she finished, she let go of him and left him. She even helped him to tidy up his clothes and covered the parts of his skin which were exposed. Di Fui remained silent as he watched her leave. Gu Shijie did not expect that he would be dumbfounded after that performance. She was extremely disappointed and sad. When she was leaning against his body, she could feel that he was excited because she could sense a little change in his physical body. Apparently, he was very good at controlling himself. Perhaps he would never change his mind in terms of protecting her virginity. Therefore, she could only live with it. She paused after taking 2 steps forward. Without turning her head back, she casually said, You don't have to avoid me, it's tiring for both of us. Since I said I wouldn't force you, then I'll keep my promise. She paused and did not feel like continuing to talk. In the next second, she was ready to teleport away. Suddenly, her wrist was grabbed by a hot palm. Without waiting for her to respond, she was pulled by a strong force and crashed into an embrace. Her heart began to race. As she lifted her head, her lips rubbed against his chin. Her lips were soft and fragrant while his chin was firm. At the moment, they both smelled a familiar scent. One of his arms was tightly locked on her waist. He sighed as he looked into her eyes. Shijie, you've misunderstood me. Gu Shijie glimpsed at him with a frown. Misunderstood? He let her take a seat. Let me ask you, do you often have bad dreams these days? Do you always feel anxious to the point where you sometimes cannot control your limbs? He listed a few symptoms. Gu Shijie was speechless. He was completely right. But was that not to be expected? Anyhow, she just got her physical body. Coupled with the information that she finally learned, it was reasonable to feel anxious. A blue bottle with some solution inside appeared on Di Fui's palm. Shijie, this is not a common illness. It's because of anxiety and impatience. Although you managed to get your new body, there are venomous residues inside your body. If these venoms cannot be removed in time, all the symptoms would be worsened. Hence, you will be bothered by the nightmares every day. You will then get more furious and lose your mind with all these challenges. This would result in you losing control. Difui continued. I've checked your pulse the day before yesterday, so I know this illness. I didn't avoid you. I needed to go for 2 days because I wanted to collect some herbs for you. However, the herbs are grown at a special location, and it requires a special liquid to make the pills. Therefore, it took 2 days to make it, including the journey back and forth. I thought I would be able to return before you woke up, but I really didn't expect you to wake up 1 day earlier. I also did not expect you to think that I was trying to avoid you. He quickly explained everything so that Gushijou understood. She now felt embarrassed for her earlier actions. Why you didn't tell the 4 messengers? They said you had something urgent to attend to. She thought he was avoiding her. Difui smiled awkwardly. Certainly, he could not tell them that the herbs were grown at a very dangerous place. Since the 4 messengers already knew he was going to immortalize, they would definitely stop him from collecting the herbs if they knew it. Since he had to pass down some of the tasks to the 4 messengers before he immortalizes, he should let them know his exact condition. Therefore, Difui told the 4 messengers the truth 4 months before the deadline of his immortalization. The 4 messengers were extremely shocked. The thing which Difui did not expect was that the 4 messengers began to have anxiety attacks since they learned the truth. On top of that, they kept so close to him all the time as if they were about to encounter their biggest enemy. Unsurprisingly, they would shed a tear in private once in a while. Sometimes he would bump into them and scold them. Thus, they did pretend to be chatty and cheerful in front of him once in a while. Difui could not do anything about it. Since Difui did not want to worry them, he decided not to tell them his risky plan just to prevent them from being anxious again. Gushijou remained silent as she listened to his explanation. Certainly, she knew how the 4 messengers treated Difui. Perhaps, their love for him was as much as what she had for Difui. The only difference was the forms of their love. It was love between a man and a lady from Gushijou, while it was brotherly love from the 4 messengers. They could even sacrifice their lives for him. Hence, the truth was impossible for them to accept. Suddenly, Gushijou recalled seeing Mufeng cry to the extent that his face was fully covered by his tears. In fact, she did feel it was like facing an apocalypse when she knew the truth. Even until now, she did not dare to imagine what she would do when the time comes. She sat there with her face down. Difui stuffed a bottle into her hand. Here, drink it. Don't waste my effort. At this moment, Gushijou did not plan to be courteous too. She took the bottle and drank the medicine. It was extremely bitter, but fragrant when it slid down her throat. She finished in a few mouthfuls. Difui heaved a sigh of relief and retrieved a piece of candy out of nowhere. "Nah, to sweeten your tongue." He was still as caring as usual. Back then when she fell sick or got injured, he always gave her a candy right after she finished taking her medicines, and he was still keeping the habit. Gushijou leaned against his chest. She took the candy and popped it into her mouth as she felt a bittersweet taste in her heart. It was a maple candy, and that was her favorite candy. She liked it very much and felt contented. However, she felt that she was going to tear again in a moment. She seemed to be too emotional these days. It was as though she was getting her period soon. In order to hide her mood swings, she straightened her back. "Should I meditate after I take the medicine?" She did not want to waste the medicine he made. Difui smiled and made her sit in a meditative position. "You just need to meditate for an hour. Let me teach you the method." He taught her the method, and Gushijou made a mental note to ensure she would not forget it. Perhaps, it was because of his companionship too that Gushijou managed to calm herself very quickly. An hour later, she opened her eyes and felt her body. She realized her blood circulation had been improved and her bones were lighter. Besides that, all her anxiety seemed to have disappeared. His medicine was amazing. She heaved a sigh and suddenly noticed Difui was lying beside her as she turned her head. His eyes were closed, and he was breathing heavily. He fell asleep. Although Gushijou was a little disappointed, she was actually relieved. She still remembered that he did not really take any breaks when she was still in a form of a soul. The only goal he had was to focus on resurrecting her. Perhaps, he did not sleep for 2 days when he was away to get this medicine for her. He must be exhausted. However, he never mentioned it. She felt sore and warm in her heart at the same time. Ugh, she wanted to be next to him. Gu Shizhou kept a slight distance away from Difui, because she did not want to disrupt his sleep. She then looked around and realized the pavilion was installed with light pink drapes. It could block out any excessive light and also give them some privacy. He was such a thoughtful person. She glimpsed at him as she lied down beside him. She realized she could not look at him enough no matter how long she fixed her eyes on him. How good would it be if time could stop here at this very moment? Gu Shizhou felt like tearing again upon reflecting on how much he had sacrificed for her. Thus, she quickly got up and took a deep breath. Difui did not have much time left. It was obvious that he would not want to see his closest companion sad during this time. It was then that Gu Shizhou realized that extending his life was not the only mission she had. She must reduce his burdens as well. Gu Shizhou wanted to take a stroll around the plum forest to figure things out. However, just as she was about to leave, an arm hooked around her waist and pulled her back. She immediately took a look and noticed that it was Difui. "Where are you going?" "Hey, you're awake. You should sleep more," Gu Shizhou responded in a soft tone. Difui smiled and kissed her on her lips. "Would you complain that I neglected you?" Gu Shizhou flushed. "No." Difui drew his handsome face nearer to her and blew his warm breath on her face. She blushed even more as she gently pushed him away. "Do you still feel tired? You should just sleep more." "No, I'm good." Difui exposed his signature grin. "I remembered someone wanted to rape me just now. Unfortunately, I was disappointed because she just ran away after removing half of my clothes." Gu Zijia's ears turned red as she recalled the incident. Strangely, even though they have been married for such a long time, and they were already considered as an old couple, she was still shy whenever he teased her. Decisively, she flipped over and pressed him down under her body. She was now on top of him. She smiled evilly, and her fingers began to remove his clothes. "My lord, are you sure you want me to dominate you?" Difui glimpsed at her as he narrowed his eyes. Surprisingly, he nodded. "Yes, please." He closed his eyes and opened his arms as though he was ready to submit himself. Gu Zijia's heart was racing, and her eyes were vigorously analyzing the situation. He must have thought that she did not have the guts to rape him. Jeez. She must give him a surprise this time. Her attractiveness grew when she became more dominant. Without hesitation, Gu Shizhou removed his clothes. His flawless body was revealed, which was familiar to Gu Shizhou. Her fingers were gently wandering around his skin, and then slowly moved toward his important regions. Do not get her wrong, she was not lingering at his pubic regions but health-related body parts. Since he had to collect the herbs from a dangerous venue, he might have gotten injured. However, he did not mention anything to her, hence she decided to check. Even though she was not fiddling with his private part, it was extremely seductive to Difui, who had not had sex for a long time. He was so turned on. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.